Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And once again, we have Dr. André Wakker with us. And before we bring him into the conversation where he shares with us about his perspective on future, I am sure you're enjoying Future Fast. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I really urge you to go back and catch up with two parts of our conversation with Dr. André Wakker, because first part gives you his journey and second part, he talks a whole lot about energy transition and why nuclear. So I'm sure you'll find it interesting. And also, in this conversation, we're going to get him to make some predictions. So perhaps you will be able to connect where he's coming from and why he's thinking the way he thinks. Because I think hopefully we have covered why he thinks like he thinks in those two conversations. So, and lastly, before we jump into the conversation, if you're not yet subscribed to Future First, do it now. And now enjoy the ride. And Dr. André Wakker, thank you so much for joining once again with us for Future Fast.
Thanks for having me.
So, André, what's your perspective on future?
Yes, net zero by 2050 will soon prove to be impossible without a social economic collapse, and that realization will come forward very, very quickly. And it will also become more and more clear that net zero by 2050 is not needed. Because yes, we are in climate change, but we are not in a climate urgency. We can adapt, we have time to adapt, and we also have more time than most people think to get rid of our fossil energy addiction. So my prediction is that the Paris Agreement and everything around net zero 2050 will in the next years disappear through the back door and will be replaced, if you will, by something which is more sustainable. And with more sustainable is we have more time than we think, and we will and nuclear will get a more prominent role. And at the end of the day, it is my conviction that nuclear will be the future. There will be place still for fossil because we need fossil to make stuff, and probably some countries for political reasons or whatever ideological reasons will go for renewables, and there will be place for renewables. But my prediction for the future is one, we have time. Net zero in 2050, impossible. Maybe by the end of the century, could even take a little bit more time. And the future is for nuclear.
All right. And well, I would regard what you shared more as your perspective, but predictions, I'll still come back to you on that.
Yes.
So, Andre, who do you think are the people who are impacting on our future? Not necessarily present, but surely our future.
Yeah. what I see is particularly among young people, but not exclusively young people. I see many authentic thinkers who actually, in a very constructive way, participate in the energy debate and come with, let's say, the same sort of view with a combination of passion and content, basically, who try to become influencers. So what I believe is that we will see individual influencers who actually will change the narrative around the energy transition. As we discussed in our last two sessions, the narrative basically today is very much about spin and make believe about renewables, at least in the EU and in the US it is. And
well, actually, so it is in India as well.
As well in India, yeah, and yeah. So I think the future will be for, I would say, wise, relatively autonomous individuals who actually, in a very authentic way, are capable simply by the fact who they are and how they communicate on the various social media, who will be capable of bringing some more sense of reality into the energy transition debate. And what I mean with sense of reality is much more long-term focus, no panic, realism. For example, you see someone you see on TikTok various nuclear students who do brilliant things about nuclear. In the UK, we have an ex-Extinction Rebellion woman called Zion Lights, who is very active on social media, who is quite influential. I have great confidence in these kind of humans that will change the debate. And actually will change the perspective and will also change the policies at the end of the day.
Well, interesting. Can you spell that, Zion?
Zion is Z-Y-O-N.
Okay.
And lights.
Okay. That is L-I-G-H-T.
S.
Okay. Okay. It's more of a pseudonym, is
it? Could be. That could be. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So, how do you think? See, now obviously the political and the industrial lobby who are driving net zero could suppress these independent voices in the social media a lot more easily, right? So, you don't think it'll happen?
No. Well, of course, the lobby is strong, definitely, and as long as there are green deals, the lobby will be financed. The reality is that when I talk about the EU, the opposition from citizens to actually the green dream, if I may say so, is increasing very, very, very fast. So our citizens are really angry because they see that it doesn't work and it costs our citizens, our taxpayers, more and more and more money every year. And it is actually that opposition that counts. It is actually becoming visible that it just doesn't work, green energy, right? So the lobby can continue as long as they want, but the realization, the shift that it isn't working, the realization that it isn't working is already there.
But
so
why is it that so many youngsters actually are seemingly very vocal about this Green Deal, even in US and even in Europe? In fact, Greta Thunberg is far more better identified or recognized even in India than perhaps, say, a Swedish prime minister. Nobody knows him. If he comes up on the street without security, nobody will know who he is. But everybody recognizes Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, that is true. But I am convinced, my future vision is that individuals like Greta Thunberg, or let's say stars like Greta Thunberg, in the next decades will totally disappear. And I'll explain you why. First of all, besides the realization that a green isn't working, more and more citizens actually also start to realize that our education system is actually in decline. Again, I talk about the EU. We have poorer and poorer education when it comes to the cognitive development. And basically, my personal vision is that ignorance is a much bigger problem than climate change. That's one thing. Let's call it ignorance. The second thing is what I would call the woke culture. So the woke culture basically is a culture that creates a sort of stardom, that creates a sort of success around losers or around victims, right? In the Netherlands, we have victims today. We have victims of our colonial structure. We have victims of climate change. We have victims of the dominant white man. You know, it is a narrative that, in my view, is actually created by a very small dominant white man elite, right? That actually puts a premium on being a victim in the EU. If you can frame yourself today in the year 2023 in our culture as a victim, and it doesn't really matter whose victim you are and what is the reason for that, but if you are sort of suppressed, then and you can frame yourself as a victim of suppression, there's guaranteed success in the EU, and that is a culture. And I see Greta Thunberg actually, with all her qualities and probably her good intentions, is a perfect example of that, right? So she is young, she is the loser, she is the young generation victim of climate change. She is not listened to. She is brilliant in framing herself in that victim role, which is a strength today in the EU. But it will disappear because it's not sustainable. You know, this cultural frame is just not sustainable.
Well, Andre, just to counter this aspect of white man's narrative,
Yeah,
in the US, it is actually the AOC and the left wing, right? AOC is, I think, mixed race or black. I'm not sure, but I think she's mixed race, and a lot of people she's bringing in. In fact, there are a lot of Indian Americans who are supporting her, and obviously she is a Democrat, and
yeah,
so she is one of those new Green Deal proponents, right?
yeah.
So is it? Do you see that this whole narrative is different in Europe and different in US?
No, I think not. I mean, the whole narrative comes from the US. You know, all these social innovations, if you will, they are all invented in the US and they come to the EU,
So
right?
even the Greta Thunberg is a product of US narrative, you say?
Yes, yes, yeah, 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 and
I
not
mean, is
not.
this your perspective, or is this how largely Europeans think, or people in Dutch? I mean, how is it? I'm just curious about.
No, it is not only my perspective, but definitely, of course, let's call it, let's summarize it into the whole woke thing, right? The whole woke theme, which is a big theme today in the EU. There are a lot of discussions about that, and there are many, let's say, more or less central or right-wing politicians or central or right-wing influencers or what, who actually make the same analysis as myself, right? It is something that is created by the white elite itself, right?
So, how do you put the AOC in there? Or do you think they have just made her a poster child to take this uh, perspective away that, okay, it's not a white man's narrative, and by bringing in a AOC kind of a personality as a poster child for it? Or do you think it's a political ploy here?
Yeah, I think, of course, yeah, it's a whole network that is collectively, they are fine. This network, whether it is white or black or doesn't really matter, but is that is the exciting thing. Not only about the woke culture and the woke network, but also the green energy network. It is apparently uh, the people find each other so quickly, and are able to isolate on a sort of moral high ground, right? And from this moral high ground, they are capable of creating power, basically. I am not a sociologist myself, but this is sort of how it works, you know. And yeah, there are networks, groups, that in that way, so actually by finding each other, by excluding others, right? It is an ideology that basically not aims to join the global community, but really to divide the global community into sections and subject sections and colors and identities and all that. And that is actually by creating all these subsections, right? And then putting a sort of moral judgment on all these subsections and dividing them into winners and losers, into the suppressed and the powerful and all that. It's basically creating it's basically building it's setting the one group against each other, right? And that is, in my humble view, not sustainable.
Well, Andre, see, as much as you make it as a science argument, even for nuclear and renewable is not sustainable, but why don't you think that the right wing making the similar argument will weaken a scientific argument? Because people will, like what you're talking about already, the woke culture is almost also, you know, on the borderline of cancel culture, right? If you're not with me, you're wrong.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
so given that they are as such extremely dismissive of anything coming from right wing, and now if the right wing makes a similar argument,
Yeah.
so there is. So don't you think it weakens the science argument that you make?
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. There is polarization. Doesn't help. And whether you're left or right or whatever, for me personally, it is totally irrelevant.
I gather that for you it is not
I mean,
relevant, but
we are all well. I think but going back to, we started with your question as to, what is my future vision and what will change. And my point is that is this policy of, no, not policy, but actually the polarization that we see is not sustainable. And that is my point. And I think that I believe in humans that in an authentic way are capable to actually address the issues, whether it is climate, whether it is energy, whether it is woke, to address these issues in a very human and very authentic way, and are capable of basically uniting the global community rather than dividing the global community. And what I see right now is I see most influencers that get the media attention and all that divide rather than unite. And that is not sustainable in my view. And my hope and my
I think in our earlier conversation the other day, you mentioned that with the elections coming in, now the right wingers are becoming stronger, and the Green Party, you're referring to Germany, and also in Netherlands and a few countries in EU, and also now election conversation is peaking in US.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look anywhere near this, right? I mean, the chasm is only widening. The gap is only widening.
That's true.
So when you say not sustainable, it's not desirable for sure. But do you see when do you see? I mean, how do you see? I mean, your perspective is what, that by when this will get started?
Yeah, well, I believe in humanity, and I believe in the strength of humans. I believe in Gandhi, basically, and I think that what you're saying is correct. We are in an era of polarization, and that hurts. It will continue for a couple of years, I'm sure. It will be hard. It will be tough. The shift to the right, definitely the shift to the extreme right, is not sustainable either, But we have to somehow, definitely in the West, we have to, we will, I'm convinced of that, we will find our way back. When we come out of this crisis, I call this a crisis, it's an educational, and it's a social, and it's a moral crisis. Let the crisis, have its place, and let the crisis go on, and let it hurt, and it will hurt for the years to come. But in the end, my belief is that we will return to positivism. We will return to the value of science. We will return to the value of knowledge. We will return to the values of respect. We will return to the values of rationality, and so, because that is the only way forward. It is basically, I think, the culture and values that we definitely, I'm talking about the EU, that we definitely had after the Second World War, when we started to rebuild, when we exploited the great discoveries of science, nuclear, quantum mechanics, IT, energy efficiency, I think these eras will return. They will come back. But we have to go first. We will, as you rightly, I support your analysis that we are not there yet. We will continue to go, well, through a fairly deep crisis, and I'll probably come back to that at the end.
Yeah. You
But,
also had mentioned one more thing in our previous conversation, that even energy transition itself is creating a disruption of EU, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
creating a new polarization. You said that
yeah,
Germany is getting isolated because of energy transition,
yeah.
and how is that playing out? And how is the energy transition? What is the influence from US in this space from the energy transition point of view?
Sorry, can you repeat your question, please? I didn't quite get it.
Well, you had mentioned that energy transition is also creating a new polarization with France
Yeah,
taking a lead
yeah,
and Germany being isolated and others aligning to France in this, whereas previously it was the Germany which was driving the renewable energy uh,
yeah. Okay.
uh, aspects of
Yeah,
energy transition.
yeah.
So I'm just curious, what is the role and influence of US and US perspective in this energy transition polarization in EU?
Okay. Your question is, does the US, what happens in the US, have an influence on what is happening in the
Exactly.
energy transition arena?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good question. I need to think about that. I think the answer is, I think they both influence each other, because basically you see the same polarization in the US as in the EU. With Trump, the US left Paris Agreement. With the Democrats, they are in the Paris Agreement. It basically is the same kind of polarization as in the EU, I would say. They strongly influence each other. To give a very specific example, since the Democrats returned in office, right? The president has thrown a lot of money to renewables with lots of subsidies, actually more than in the EU. And that made the EU green politicians basically say, okay, we're doing not enough. We have to pump more money into it ourselves. So
Yeah, so
it's
that
very
was the
much in.
reason. No, but that was the reason I was asking. So the actions in US is not really aligning to the broad actions in EU, right? Whereas here, Germany is for renewables, whereas you were suggesting that France is taking a lead, and many other EU members are aligned to France in going towards nuclear, whereas US is still double downing on things. So, is there a gap in the influence? Is there a non-alignment of sorts? That's what I was thinking. Is
Yeah,
there?
yeah. Well, good question. I haven't give that a deep thought. When I probably okay, here's my answer. When it comes to the recognition and the realization that green energy isn't working, right? I think the EU is ahead of the US
Okay.
because countries like Germany and Denmark and also the Netherlands, we actually see the negative technical impacts of renewables, so on the grid and on space consumption, right? We see it in the EU more clearly than in the US.
But Nordic countries are also big on renewables, right?
The Nordic countries, no, not really. Norway has is not the EU, but Norway has hydro.
Not EU, of course. Yeah.
And when it comes to renewables, Sweden and Finland have a lot of biomass traditionally already. They don't have that much wind either. And both Sweden and Finland basically run on nuclear.
But they promote renewables outside.
Well, no. If you look at Sweden, Sweden recently switched to nuclear. So Sweden basically was the first EU member state that basically copied me, if you will. They say, we don't want a green deal anymore. We want a clean deal. So we want nuclear in our energy, in our clean energy mix, you know? France, 75% nuclear in the electricity mix. And if you translate it to primary energy, it is about 40% of the primary energy mix, because in France, also heating is already electric since decades. You know, it's not very effective, but to put it very sharp, France, Sweden, Finland, in the past, also Germany itself, we have very, very strong nuclear countries. Whilst in the US, there are a few member states which have some nuclear, which is 20% or 25% of electricity, but there are also countries, states, that have less nuclear. So basically the impact of losing nuclear power in the EU over the last 20 years, led by Germany, but not exclusively Germany. Also, Sweden has closed. The previous left-wing government in Sweden closed, I believe, 1 or 2 power plants, which still can be reopened. Belgium has closed. You know? So I think the impact of the decline of nuclear and the rise of renewables with all its technical problems is, this is my point, is much more visible in concentrated pockets than in the US. So we are suffering already more than the Americans. So
Right.
probably we are,
like
if it
you
comes.
said, unfortunately, but thanks to the war. That's what you said, right?
Also, and of course, we have, that is a good point. And we have a gas shortage, which clearly, which forced the Greens to go back to coal, right? Whilst in the US, you see this very successful shift from coal to gas. So, to summarize it, the EU is much more in trouble when it comes to energy, right? So the rethinking of the Green Deals, we are more advanced in that. We are further in that than the US.
So,
that is
so you think another 2-3 years at best, all these things will start turning the table?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, before I come back to ask you for your predictions, what are the things in future you think that will not change? Even if some things you would like to see it change, but you don't think it will change because we are humans.
Oh, yeah. So I'll take a chance on that. That's our democracy.
Okay. I mean, when you say democracy, what we will still be haggling with a partial or sometimes faulty democracy, but we will stay with democracy, or do you think we will?
Well, I think we will stay with democracy. I would say, unfortunately, because that was your question. Even if I don't like it, will it stay?
Correct.
But in the Netherlands, we have more than 20 political parties.
Well, that sounds like in India we have a lot more political parties.
You have a lot more. Oh, poor
Yes.
you.
Yeah. Well, in a given state, it may be 3-4 leading political parties, but there are also smaller parties. But
Yeah.
Across India, if you have to look at it, I think we have a lot more political parties.
Right. Well, already that probably explains why the government in India, has difficulties with, long-term infrastructural planning things, all that. Let's say my point is that with the 20 parties in the Netherlands already, our government basically is becoming weak. And that is something that is an issue right now. 1 month ago, quite a famous politician, a well-known politician who traditionally came from the Christian Democrat Party, started his own party with one key message: strong government. He is leading the opinion polls right now, one person. Yeah. And that clearly demonstrates, again, the sort of crisis that we are in. That I'll focus on the Netherlands. We are an extremely rich country where people generally live in luxury, basically. Not all. And the level of comfort and the level of wealth is in decline. But relatively speaking, it is great to live in the Netherlands, right? Nevertheless, because we are so rich and because we are living in luxury without many threats, except the Ukraine war, all that, but also that is relatively far away, right? We have a class of politicians that, generally speaking, never have done something in society or in business, have a training in communication or in law, and that basically entered into the political arena straight from the universities. So they are well educated in talking and in creating narratives, right? But they have never proven. They have actually seldom. I'm talking general now, but they have never added value to some real life hard issues, whether be it in the public sector, whether be it in the private sector, whether be it as an entrepreneur, whatever. Nothing. The extreme example of that is actually the green ministers in the German government never finalized the study, wrote fake books. The foreign minister of Germany, who is a green, she's called Annalena Baerbock, doesn't even speak proper German.
What's her native tongue then?
German.
Then Yusuf doesn't speak proper German?
No, the way she articulates words, as soon as a word becomes somewhat complicated, whether it's a long word or it's a technical word, she makes mistakes.
How will such people get even elected then?
That is the network, Nanju. That is the framing. That is the attention they get. That is.
I thought such things happen in India, but how does such things happen even in Germany?
I think if I knew how that worked, I could do something against it, right? But I can't. But I think that is the one of the fundamental problems which I would like to see change. I would like to see less spin and make believe politics.
What you're saying is these things will not change.
That is what I think. Yeah.
At one end, you are so optimistic that nuclear will come and people, human beings are generally good, they will. But on this side, you are so pessimistic. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
we are all bag of contradictions anyway. True.
Well, you need to have optimists in your life, otherwise things don't change, and no, I'm optimistic about nuclear despite this I would say crisis in democracy, right? And also the crisis in democracy is not advantageous for nuclear, because for nuclear you need long-term visions. Nuclear power plants are there for 100 years, so it's a long-term thing. And all politics is short-term, but that's a problem anywhere. But I'm optimistic because green energy actually now in the EU hurts people. It hurts the wallets of people. It hurts actually the availability of energy. So people actually feel the pain of renewables, if you like, and as soon as they feel the pain, they will act and they will vote on other parties, and that will make a change, because taxes increase, energy. Our energy prices are sky high, specifically in the green countries. In the green countries, the energy bills are the highest within the EU. So I would say it's basically economy, right? And when it comes to the laws of economy are hard, they are clear, they are transparent, and will set things in motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that.
Correct. So, Andre, time for your predictions. So, what do you predict, and what are your predictions for Future Fast?
Wow. Okay. I think that 2 points. Let's talk about, let's pick the point, 2 themes. One is humanity, and the second thing is democracy. Let's start with humanity. I believe that in the next decades, we will see a new Gandhi, or we see a new JFK, or another person who actually is capable through to his or her maybe authentic presence, right, to unite the global community rather than dividing them. That is my vision, and we see things happening already there, and these new talents, they will come from a surprising angle. They will not come from the traditional political arena, maybe also not from the science arena, but something new, something other. I don't know yet where from, but something is about to happen there, right?
Okay.
That is my vision for the future, and it will not come from the IPCC. It will not come from any woke subsector, all that, but it will come from brave, authentic individual or individuals, right?
Which part of the world? You're saying?
No, it will come from the new world.
What is the
So
new world? You
the
did
new
mention
world,
the new world.
the new world is your world, my friend. So it's India, China, Middle East, Africa. Yeah,
Okay.
it will come from there. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and probably also somehow related to your many religious traditions. You know, it will come from a foundation of peace and also inner peace. You know, I think your the deep cultures in the new world will, I believe, more powerful than the spin and make believe fast movements in the old world. And for me, the old world is the EU and the US. Yeah, so that's one thing. And then democracy. Yes, democracies will continue, as we discussed, unfortunately. But I think by mid-century in the old world, our democracies will have transformed into something which is more aligned with, I would say, take the other extreme, with China. We will not have a one-party system, I'm sure about that.
But you are saying it will go towards authoritarian governments?
I would say more authoritarian and more professional, I would say. Because
And professional as in more, I mean, like China, right? China is an authoritarian, but extremely professional again.
yeah,
But
yeah.
do you think the European world, which is so used to freedom of speech and democracy, will actually align to something like that?
Well, take the yes, I think absolutely, because take the European Union. You know, the European Union started shortly after World War II as the alliance of coal and steel, I believe, and it was a very rational economic alliance to foster trade, to foster economic progress, and to foster exchange of human talents between what is now called member states. And that worked very, very well. But it was very much an invisible experts, professional, almost engineers, an engineering type of entity which worked from Brussels, but was invisible, and its strength was that it was invisible, right? But it basically engineered a more effective economy, right? It worked perfect. But it failed. It failed when things like social justice and climate and more political themes came in, due to which the EU became more powerful on, let's say, political themes and basically also political nonsense about whether or not we should package our milk in this or that container or something like that. So it declined from a big picture economic powerhouse to a micro managerial, very much environmental justice related political thing, you know. and that is not sustainable. We need to go back to a much more professional political culture, and we have shown as a EU that we can join in diversity. We can do it, but it crashed along the way. So
So an
we need to repair
authoritarian
that.
system will make it better, you think?
Absolutely, and with authoritarian, I mean professional, stable, more focused on the long term, and populated by let's say it politicians or policymakers that actually have proven their value in real life.
But there's always a risk of what happened in China, where he declared that he's president for life, and what happened in Russia, where he just one man became the everything for the government.
Yes, that is, I think, that extreme we don't want, right?
No, but how do you, when you go towards that, you are not in a control of such a thing, stopping such a thing, right?
Well, I have a very practical idea.
Okay.
One thing, and that is very low-hanging fruit, that we could do is basically say, if you want anyone who wants to work in politics, whether it is national or EU, or everyone who wants to have a high function in the public sector, right? this is very okay. Should be at least 40. The age should be minimal 40, right?
Okay.
And they should be able to demonstrate a track record, a successful track record, either in the public or in the private sector, right? So this is a challenge, right? But that is the way that I am thinking. We need professionals. We need wise men and women in our
Andre, I'm
government.
just curious. What you're sharing, is that a similar thought process that many people in your circle share or think like this in EU? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, do you see the context? See, we are in 2023 today. Probably in 1923, there were people in Europe thinking like this, and in 1936, who took charge of the largest country there. So, do you think the history is just repeating itself?
I don't know. I have no crystal ball, but I have let's say I have an antenna.
No, but I mean, what you're saying, I mean, it just sounds like it's going towards that. I mean, I was just, for a moment, I was just thinking that.
Well, it has to Nanju, because when my antennas basically say that how we are doing it right now, it just isn't working anymore. And the key word is we need more professionalism, we need more long-term focus, and we need some form of dominance, right? Not in the Chinese way, but some form of a more authoritarian, stable, this is the way forward, this is what we're going to do the next 30 years. We need planning, we need 10-year plans, we need 20-year plans, we need a vision of the future, which doesn't say we want to go net zero by 2050. No, we believe that we can realize net zero by 2100, right? And we also have the technology and the means to do it, and we have a plan, right?
Well, India said India's target is 2070. At least that's what our Prime Minister promised.
Well, I think these kind of things we need. We need vision, we need wisdom, and we need plans. And today we basically, in our luxury country like the Netherlands, we just have hot air.
Well, I really hope the audience and listeners also see all the optimistic things that you spoke and recount that. But also, I don't want to call it dystopian, but yeah, near depressing uh, future. But also, what you propose as a possibility, as much as it sounds optimistic and hopeful, also
Yeah,
comes with a very strong possibility of negative impact, which the humanity has experienced even 100 years
yeah.
ago to some parts of the world even today. So it's very interesting, Andre. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, perspectives, and please keep up your voice for nuclear. You're doing, I mean, more good luck on that for sure.
Yeah.
And for the audience and listeners, do follow Andre, uh, Dr. Andre Wakker. The links are right below this podcast. And look up those statistics, make your own judgment, right? Agree, disagree, but be informed. That's very important. And share it across because very strong arguments and statistics that he's sharing across. And do connect, exchange because he's extremely approachable and communicates. So I hope you enjoyed our conversation and do share it across. And if you have not yet subscribed to Future Path, do it right now. And Andre, once again, thank you so much for being with us, sharing your perspective, and making time to do all this. And all the best for everything that you do.
It was a pleasure, Nanju, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.